I want to take this opportunity to thank you all for coming to our statue dedication in honor and memory of Albert Patterson. I am Jackie Screws, and I'm president of Chattahoochee Valley Community College, and I serve along with Dr. David White as co-chair for the Russell County Phoenix City Bicentennial Committee. This activity today represents over 2 years of work performed by the committee, and it is the culminating activity of this committee's work. We recognize that we are out here in the elements, and in that regard, we're going to keep our remarks very brief, and we ask those of you who are making remarks to do so as well. Before we get started, we want to recognize any elected officials who are in attendance today. If you are seated, would you please stand? And if you're standing, would you wave your hand so our audience will know who you are? Great. We know that we have individuals representing the Russell County Commission, representing the Phoenix City Council, and there are other elected officials throughout the audience. I know I saw Chris Blackshire, our representative, state representative, so we are so happy to have you all, and we appreciate your support of this activity. With that said, I want to take this opportunity now to introduce Dr. David White, who is the co-chair of the Russell County Phoenix City Bicentennial Committee. Dr. White is the Vice Chancellor of Troy University's Phoenix City campus. Dr. White has been with Troy University for over 24 years, initially serving as a member of the faculty and later as an administrator. He was appointed as the Vice Chancellor of the Phoenix City campus in 2010. Dr. White spent a 26-year career with the United States Army as an infantry officer with numerous instructional and training assignments to supplement his leadership and command positions. Dr. White has been one of the co-chairs of the Russell County Phoenix City Bicentennial Committee since its inception in January of 2017. Please join me in welcoming Dr. White.
And thank all of you for joining us today. Let me begin by welcoming the family of Albert Patterson. First, Albert Love Patterson III, grandson of Albert Patterson, is here with us and will speak on behalf of the family in a few minutes. We also have Barbara Scholl, granddaughter of Albert Patterson, Rudy Scholl, her husband, J.R. Scholl, son of Barbara and great-grandson of Albert, Colin Scholl, son of J.R., great-great-grandson of Albert Patterson. Is Ben Patterson here? Hello, Ben. Ben Patterson, son of Albert and great-grandson of Albert. Wendy Patterson, his wife. Leslie Whitted, daughter of Wendy and stepdaughter of Ben. Tim Patterson. Hello, Tim. Son of Albert and great-grandson of Albert Patterson. And Amanda White, Tim's guest. Is Amanda here? Oh, nice. I'm glad you all could join us. Let's give a round of applause to the family. And thank you so much for joining us today. I'd also like to take a moment to recognize the members of the Russell County Phoenix City Bicentennial Committee who formed in January of 2017 and served over these past 3.5 years. I'd ask them to stand or raise their hand when I call their name. They are President Jacqueline Screws, Commissioner Chance Corbett, Dr. Cordelia Moffitt, Ms. Denise Dubois, Mr. Dennis Beeson, Ms. Jennifer Davidson, Ms. Jennifer Lohman, Mr. James Centric, Ms. Naomi Elliott, Mr. Tommy Boswell, and Mr. Victor Feliciano. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for supporting our efforts over these years, and let's give them a round of applause. The Bicentennial Committee determined early on that when the Alabama 200 celebration ended, our community needed to have some lasting sign of the occasion. We chose 3 projects that we felt would accomplish this goal. First, a book, A History of Russell County and Phoenix City. Jim Centric took on this project and the book will be published later this year. Second, an oral history of life in Phoenix City and Russell County during the tumultuous 1940s and 50s. Most of those men and women with direct memories of those times are no longer with us. But for those that are, we wanted to capture their recollections and stories through oral and video recordings so that future historians would have those memories to reference. Denise Dubois took on this project, which continues. And a third project that would be something that the community could see. A visual connection to our history. A sculpture of a figure seated on a bench, inviting citizens and visitors, young and old, to sit for a moment and think about that time in history of our community when everything changed. When the death of a man sparked a series of events and the people took back their city and county from the grip of organized crime. 66 years ago this month, Albert Patterson was murdered by criminal elements that control this community. Others had been killed before him. Others had been injured and harassed and threatened. But the death of Albert Patterson on the sidewalk across the street at that building on a hot summer evening in 1954 changed everything. It changed something. It reverberated throughout the community, throughout the state, and even throughout the nation. And citizens took action. Citizens took their city back. They took their county back. And they never allowed organized crime to rule their lives again. The statue of the statue of Albert Patterson, seated on this bench, invites you to pause for a moment, to take a seat, to think about those difficult times. Times when most thought things would never change, could never change. The odds against change were too great. It had been going on for too long. But all things can change. What people think and what people do can change things. This sculpture of Albert Patterson, done so beautifully by Mr. John Lumpkin, who grew up in this county, beckons us to pause, to sit a spell, to think, to imagine a better life, a better community, a better world. Perhaps when you sit next to him, you'll hear him whispering to you. Things can change. Things can get better. You can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. White. I think that was so eloquently stated. We can make a difference in our world. And now, representing the County Commission is Mr. Chance Corbett. Commissioner Corbett has been a Russell County Commissioner for District 6 since 2012. Commissioner Corbett proposed the idea of forming a local bicentennial committee. He also introduced the idea to the committee and coordinated funding from the county and the state for the statute which we are unveiling today. Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Chance Corbett, Russell County Commissioner.
I want to start off by saying thank you to the commission. A lot of the funding was provided by the county commission through our tourism funds, and it's a positive step in the right direction for our county and a great project. I know President Screws mentioned I brought the idea forward, but it was an inner city strip where I first saw it in other cities where they had statues sitting on benches and people would sit down and take pictures of them. And I thought the right thing was to help tell our story here, tell our history and what that was. Before I get too far down the line, and like I said, I'm not going to talk long, I want to say thank you to several people and as far as the funding goes. First person I reached out to on this was Representative Chris Blackshear. He immediately secured fundings with the help of Mr. Lee Sintel, which I know Lee is going to speak here in a few minutes. Really appreciate that, because without that we couldn't have got off the ground and get it started. And then the county came in and helped match it. Then obviously all the other parties, a lot of them are on this sign over here, that stepped up and put money and time, and the city. I'll say it to the mayor. I know the mayor is going to speak in a few minutes, and the city manager Wallace Hunter didn't bat an eye when we asked to put it here, on the city property. And Jennifer obviously Jennifer and Sean have been a very huge asset to the city, I know, and we really appreciate that, because this, if nothing else, we're showing working together too with this project. The city and the county we're standing in a project that we both worked together and made happen. I think that's huge too. Telling the story, the location being right across the street from the building where Albert Patterson worked, and then the unfortunate incident that happened. We want to tell that story. We want to tell the story of success and triumph and what it was for this community. I've lived nowhere else in my life but Russell County. I'm 47 years old. I've never lived anywhere else. I can't tell you the first time I heard this story, but I was probably a kid, because my dad, as most of y'all, and a lot of y'all know, served in the state senate for 12 years. And I think probably the first introduction I had was watching the movie, watching what in the world, where is this at? I had no clue. And a lot of people still have no clue. But hopefully people will be able to come to whether it's the interpretive plaque that the commission was able to do, or the statue, they'll kind of understand what that history was, and step in and tell it to their kids, and let them know the history of Phoenix City and how we've gotten to the point that Mayor Lowe has it today. And I think it's important for us to know that the city, I was at Renfro's the other day, they let me stand up, and I was honored to stand up and speak when that store opened. Great things are happening. We want to continue, and as a county commissioner, I want to support our cities, the city of Phoenix City and the town of Hurtsboro as well. So again, thank you, Dr. White. Thank you to the committee members. I know he's recognized everybody. Huge. Without it, we wouldn't have had this. We would not be standing here. And I think showing the support for it today is big. I want to take just off record for just a second, or off task, and ask Commissioner Reed or Commissioner Martin if they want to say anything real quick. You want to say something? All right, come on.
I want to say that I was a senior at Central High School the year that Mr. Patterson was assassinated. And it was traumatic for me as a teenager. And then I went on to Girl State, and when there, the comments made, it was like we were ostracized, so to speak. I had a friend go with me, and she and I, it was just it was awful. That's the best I can describe it. And those days I do remember. Such a sad occasion. And I'm so thankful that his family could come and honor him, and for the citizens that have participated in it. Thank you.
I'd like to say good afternoon to everybody, and I also like to thank the committee for doing an outstanding job. Mr. Patterson, his life, by him dying won't in vain. Just look around in Phoenix City today. Look at all the development things that are going on in Phoenix City. He said we have made a difference. All of us working together, come together in unity. Where there's unity, there's strength. And we got to continue trying to do what we can to make our city a better place to live. And I just want to say thank you very much.
Thank y'all so much. And again, for the other commissioners, I know Commissioner Lee had to go out of town with his grandkids, and Commissioner Screws and Commissioner Epps weren't unable to be here today, but believe me, this has been a very group effort to it. Thank y'all so much.
We certainly appreciate this opportunity, and I'd like to thank everyone for coming out this morning in this hot heat, but it shows what we're made of. And I also like to thank the Patterson family, and I'll say some things about that a little later on. I will not be here long, but I do want to have the other commissioners of our city that are here. Councilman Arthur Day, would you stand? Councilwoman Vicki Johnson Carter. Steve Bailey and Griff Gordy could not be here, and for the sake of time, I'm not going to ask you all to speak. I've been given that advice and direction because of the sake of time. But I would like to say this. We all know the history of Phoenix City, and it was a very bleak history. But I do want us to understand that the history is what makes us. And what we're doing today, we are revamping the history of Phoenix City. That's vitally, vitally important. We had the history, but we're standing together, united in this county, in this city. We are revamping our communities. And I'd like to share this with you. I spoke yesterday and I talked about being sacrificial as leaders. And in order to revamp a history, and in order to have a history that we can all be proud of, it takes sacrificial giving. It takes sacrificial leaders. And because Albert Patterson had a sacrificial life, to be willing to be sacrificed to make things better for our community, is the reason why we're here today. But it needs to have sacrificial people and leaders. And what I would like to ask all of us, we need more so than ever in our community, in our city, in our state, is that we all need to have the mindset of having a sacrificial spirit, which means that we're thinking more of our community and our state and of other people's more than we do ourselves. Because if it had not been for that sacrificial spirit that Mr. Patterson had, we would not be here today revamping our history. And guess what? It's a great history going forward even more, because someone was willing to stand up as a leader to be sacrificial. And I want to thank the Patterson family. Thank you all for coming to Phoenix City. I do want to do my job and then ask you all to come back. And even higher than that, I want to do my job even more. We want to have you to move here because we need the tax money. And I'm only doing my job, and I'm not going to apologize for that. But the message I want to make sure we all understand, let's learn from the Patterson and Albert Patterson to be the sacrificial leaders that we can continue to raise our community. Because without a heart of being sacrificial and being a sacrificial leader, we cannot do the job for our community that will echo into eternity. Thank you all so much. Thanks to all the Patterson family. May God continue to bless all of us individually as well as collectively. Thank you so much.
I'm delighted to represent the Bicentennial Commission, Governor Kay Ivey, Senator Arthur Orr, who is chairman of the Bicentennial Commission, and also Jay Lamar, who was unable to be here today because she's moving her daughter to college. And so she asked me to share these remarks. Greetings from the Alabama Bicentennial Commission to the hosts and attendees of today's dedication ceremony. Communities throughout the state have participated in the commemoration of Alabama's bicentennial statehood with activities and projects ranging from parades to publications. Projects of such lasting impact and significance as the Albert Patterson statue being dedicated today will stand now and into the future, educating generations about the people, places, and events of our history. Congratulations to the Phoenix City Bicentennial Committee, the city and project partners on their accomplishment. 18 years ago, I toured the building with Bill Benton. When he saw that I had been named State Tourism Director, he wanted me to come visit and see Fort Mitchell. I said, I'll do that, provided you'll give me a tour of the Colson building. And that started us on doing a historic marker, which Governor Patterson turned down, and he did his own. And that was the taller one. And I have not read the current one, but this is a great way, this statue is a great way to generate more tourism in this city. And since my office is funded by lodgings tax, I encourage all of you to spend the night as often as possible at the courtyard, because I get 1% of your lodgings tax. And unfortunately, right now, people are not staying in hotels. But we were delighted to be able to support Chase's request for some funding for this project. Y'all have done, Mr. Turner, you and others have just done a remarkable job getting everybody in the community involved. And for the next 200 years, people are going to be visiting this site, learning about Mr. Patterson, learning about the sacrifices of many other people who put their lives at risk to change this county and to change this city. And this is a great civics lesson started by a statue. So I'm delighted to represent the state of Alabama, and congratulations from the Bicentennial Commission.
Representing the Patterson family, we are honored to have with us Al Patterson III. He is the grandson of Albert Patterson. Originally from Montgomery, Alabama, Albert Patterson III graduated from the United States Military Academy at West Point in New York in 1971 with a Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering and a commission in the United States Army. Subsequently, he received additional bachelor and master's degrees in aerospace engineering from the Georgia Institute of Technology in Atlanta, Georgia. In 1997, completing more than 26 years of distinguished service with the United States Army in a broad variety of command and staff positions, Colonel retired Albert Patterson returned to his native Alabama. There, he and his partner established Navigator Development Group, Inc., or NDGI, specializing in global solutions across diverse services such as information technology, process improvement, modeling and simulation, staff augmentation, training, and 3D interactive technology. In 2005, Navigator International LLC was formed to encompass the Navigator's growing international construction and operations maintenance activities. In 2013, Al Patterson assumed sole ownership of Navigator International LLC and expanded its offerings to include international export brokerage of defense articles. As chairman of the board of NDGI, he established a strong reputation for excellence in leadership within the business industry, as reflected by the awards it received, and they are numerous. And I asked Mr. Patterson before we started our program if I could abbreviate his introduction, because I can assure you he is very well awarded and very well involved in the community. I want to share just a few of his awards. Al Patterson is involved in numerous professional and civic organizations and the recipient of several awards. Life member of the DAV, Association of the United States Army, Army Aviation Association of America, recipient of the Order of the St. Michael Silver Award, Association of Graduates of the United States Military Academy, United States Army War College Alumni Association, and the list goes on. I pause here to say that it is an honor to have members of the Patterson family in our presence, and it is an extreme honor to have Al Patterson, grandson of Albert Patterson, here to provide remarks. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Albert Patterson.
It's a great honor for me today to represent the Patterson family in this great occasion here in Phoenix City, Alabama. On June the 18th, 1954, Albert Patterson drove down to his office here at the Coulter building and parked an automobile in the alleyway here, went up to his office, picked up some papers he was carrying to Birmingham the next day, came down and was getting in his car, and he was shot. Crawled out onto the sidewalk and bled out on the sidewalk there and died. I was 4 years old. My sister was 1 year old, and we were at our home on Pine Circle about a mile from here at that time. In 1971, I had finished West Point. I had gone to Ranger School at Fort Benning, Georgia, and I was spending a good bit of time with my grandmother, Agnes Louise Benson, who really ought to be sitting on the bench here next to my grandfather, because she was a great woman that stood next to her man. I sat there on the little metal porcelain covered table in her dining room, in her kitchen, and I started asking her questions and writing notes down about the family. I felt like a military interrogator interrogating a prisoner of war, because every time it's like, well, who married who and who had what kids and what did this or that. I would tell you that I still have those same original notes that I took on that metal table on Pine Circle. But I became the family genealogist. That means that you become the recipient of all the little old lady shoe boxes of obituaries and newspaper clippings and graduation announcements and so forth. And it's a blessing and a curse. The blessing is that you really get to know the human side of life. Albert Patterson was born in 1897 on a dirt road in a wood frame house up in Goldville, Alabama. In 1916, he sought adventure, went to the oil fields in Texas seeking his fortune, graduated from high school, Fairfield County, Texas. And in 1916, he joined the Texas National Guard and was federalized and taken down on the U.S. border with Mexico and fought in the Mexican Border Service campaign and was awarded the Mexican Border Service Medal. He came home, met a beautiful young woman named Agnes Louise Benson, and in 1917 he was recalled to federal service in the Texas National Guard and had to return to Brownsville, Texas to guard the King Ranch from the invasion that was expected to come from Mexico, who was sided with the Germans at the time. A lady, 23 years old, got on a train, followed her man to Brownsville, Texas. And she always swore to me that they went to see the preacher before they went to the hotel when she got there in Brownsville. I never tried to confirm or deny her statement, but I do have her marriage license that was 14 July 1917 in Brownsville, Texas. He'd go out to the camp every day from the hotel, and one day he left and didn't come back. She went out there and they had taken him up to Camp Bowie. Camp Bowie was where they were forming the 141st Infantry Regiment to plan to go to France as part of the American Expeditionary Force going into World War I. If you've seen the new movie 1917, it gives you an idea of what was waiting for them there when they arrived. She followed him up there, worked at Tiger Candy Company, and every Sunday she'd go out to visit him where they'd have a picnic out at Camp Bowie. And years later, I had occasion to visit with my grandmother what the site used to be Camp Bowie, and her eyes lit up, and she looked out across the field there in a subdivision of Fort Worth, Texas, and she said, well, this lake right here used to be at Camp Bowie, and over there they dug trenches and stuff like that they could practice going over the top. And on Saturday, they went out there and put fresh straw in the trenches and things like that, so that when we came out on Sunday, we could go out there and mess around. She had quite a twinkle in her eyes when she told me that. She was quite a pip, that's right. But so their training was completed. They took a train to New York City, got on a boat, and arrived in France. And 2 weeks later, Albert Patterson was cut down, leading a charge in the Meuse-Argonne campaign with the 141st Infantry Regiment, 36th Division, and lay on the battlefield overnight. Told the story that it hailed that night, and that hail was what he was able to eat to have water to survive on the battlefield that night. And the next day he was recovered. 66 officers and 1,227 enlisted soldiers of the regiment were casualties that one day, just to sort of show you the carnage of World War I. He was evacuated the next day to a French hospital, and then eventually made it to the hospital at Fort McPherson, Georgia, where he recovered over a 2-year period. He used to tell a story that he watched a peach tree outside of his hospital room, and he knew it was 2 years because he saw the tree bear fruit 2 times. He came home in 1920 and then subsequently went to law school, became an attorney, had been an educator, and then eventually came to Phoenix City, Alabama. He never really considered himself disabled, and he wanted to get rid of that label of being disabled, and so he walked with crutches and then with a walker, and 2 weeks before he was killed on the streets of Phoenix City, he gave up his cane. My sister and I had been in Germany with my parents during the Korean War occupation forces in Germany. We had recently come home for my dad to join his father in the law practice here in Phoenix City. Everybody used to ask me, well, what do you remember about your grandfather? It's always fun what you remember when you're a 4-year-old. I remember sitting at the dining room table, and the old gentleman that would sit there, and it was rather stern kind of guy, you know, he would count out 7 butter beans on his plate. Now, I'll tell you, butter beans in those days were pretty big. At least they were big in the eyes of a 4-year-old. But that was his routine, 7 butter beans on that plate. So my sister and I were living in the basement of the house up there on Pine Circle that eventful day. Today, it is a great event that Phoenix City stands as a shining example of what people can do when good triumphs over evil. That's the example that you have for your community, for your state, for your nation, for your country. Good over evil. Albert Patterson was a keystone in the bridge that took the encouragement of the Russell Betterment Association to join them in their fight against vice and corruption and the evil history that Phoenix City had had up to that point. And so, following his assassination, the citizens of Russell County and Phoenix City were able to throw off the shackles of bondage that they had from the evil that had existed here in the past. On behalf of the Patterson family, I would like to thank the people of Russell County and Phoenix City for commemorating the role that Albert Patterson played in helping to make all of this so. Thank you very much, and God bless America.